What you're about to watch is indeed very inspiring. It's a message from a man I call the Guru Brainstormer. I don't know if you know what that means. But when there is a person who is so intelligent and who understands exactly how to brainstorm, how to generate ideas, how to creatively offer solutions, then this is the man. You will always give it up for him, every time and anytime. His name is Professor Utomi, and is a fantastic professor of economics and management. Professor Utomi was at the 2014 edition of the ICQ National Conference, and then he shared a whole lot of insights on how to solve unemployment issues in the country, on how small and medium-scale businesses can get to grow, and then he went very, very practical. One of the things he said, which I must let you know, is exactly how the environment affects businesses and how government can ensure that the ecosystem or the environment that surrounds businesses supports those businesses to grow, and how also the entrepreneurs themselves can manage those environments to achieve success. You need to watch the video that comes after now to appreciate much more of what I'm talking about. My name is Charles Ajibui, and I am privileged to be the founder of ICQ. Enjoy your watching.
The year 2000, the first Africa Competitiveness Report had just been produced. A team led by Jeffrey Sachs, who was then at Harvard, worked on that report. I had the good fortune of being part of a team. I wrote one of the chapters in the first Africa Competitiveness Report. When it was being presented, you know, in those the years of Afro-pessimism, when the world had given up on Africa, will Africa make progress, and all of that. President of Mozambique raises his hand and says, I have a question. You people have come with this report, another report again. The last time we came to you with our problems, you said to us that, you know, what we should do is go and tighten our belts. That if we tighten our belts, investments will flow in, and jobs will be created, economic growth will take place, and our problems will be over. So you see, we went home, we fastened our belts. In fact, our belts were so tight that you couldn't see anything. It was all belt, nobody. You see, but no investments came. We waited, no investment. We went back to World Bank. Say, World Bank, see, all belt, nobody. Where is investment? World Bank said, we need this. People need to see, you need to be patient because people need to see track records. So you say, we went home, and our middle names became patience. We were laying down tracks, we were making records, but no investment. Everybody laughed and all of that. Cut a long story short, World Bank Vice President, where are things today? Say, well, sorry. The final analysis is still about being patient and showing track record. Of course, everybody had a good laugh, but I did not find it funny because I kept thinking to myself, why is it that even the World Bank cannot explain why progress is not taking place in Africa? And it seemed to me that it was because the World Bank was focusing too much on a unicausal analysis of how growth takes place and what is unicausal? One cause. This is the thing that happens. And the general debate amongst African-minded economists back in those days as to why growth was slow in Africa focused on two tracks. There were two competing explanations in the main. And these two competing explanations both looked down one track. One track basically said that Africa was growing slowly because Africa was naturally disadvantaged. It was called the destiny argument or the geography argument. Incidentally, the person who led that argument was the guy I was working with on this particular project called Jeffrey Sachs. Some of you may have read his book, End of Poverty. But Jeffrey Sachs argued that Africa was unfortunate to be located in the tropics because it was in the tropics, malaria was, mosquitoes were hitting the people and they were having malaria all the time, so they did not have enough power to produce. They were always sick of malaria. This is why General Obasanjo's first major policy was roll back malaria. That was according to advice from Jeffrey Sachs. Now there's a professor of economics at Oxford called Paul Collier, who has written many books, including one titled The Bottom Billion. And Paul Collier says that the destiny argument is absolute nonsense. That Africa is poor because African leaders have made the wrong policy choices. Now, you can imagine, even though I was working with Jeff Sachs on that particular project, I believe in the Collier argument more than in the Sachs alibi. I call it Sachs alibi because Sachs was not saying that God punished Africa. No. Because the way that some economists used to put it, that Sachs says Africa is poor because it was destined to be poor, geography being the reason. And that's not what Sachs was essentially trying to put up excuses for African leaders. He said, look, if the world can get together and help Africa eliminate malaria. And my simple question at the time was, look, my friend, Malaysia, Singapore, these countries are all located on the same latitude as most of the countries of sub-Saharan Africa. How come they are breaking out of where they are? And I ask, take Israel, completely in the desert, exporting roses to Europe every night in 747s, exporting all kinds of horticulture, food. We should have said because they're in the desert, they are sentenced to perpetual poverty. So the truth of the matter is that it's not about your geographic location, it's about your application of yourself. If we could clear that argument, therefore, we could make progress. Well, what did the World Bank seem to be doing? World banks seem to be concentrating on structural economic issues, on policy. To take the Collier line, if you just get policy right, everything else will go well. And that evening, I said to myself, we need to deal with this problem. It's more complex than get policy right, because that's what the president of Mozambique was saying. We have worked so hard on policy, we are getting it right, but yet the promise is not coming. And so this framework that I offered, which we call the growth drivers framework, recognizes 6 sets of variables that are critical. And one of them is the one we're going to talk about some more here. One is policy choices, the point that Paul Collier makes, that you need to make the right policies for progress. But policy choices are a necessary but not a sufficient condition for progress. Second, very important, institutions. Bill Clinton, when he came to Africa for the first time as president of the US, first statement in Accra said, what Africa needs is strong institutions, not strong men. And somebody called me up the day and said, look, do you now work for the CIA? I said, what do you mean? He said, did you see the script of the US president or did you contribute to it? 24 hours before he landed, in fact, he was airborne, flying from Europe towards Ghana. I was speaking at the Golden Gate and I used almost the exact same words. Nigeria's problems is that Nigeria relies too much on strong men. What Nigeria needs are strong institutions. And Obama says almost the same thing in Ghana the next day. What are institutions? And why are they so important for development? When we talk about entrepreneurship, in a few minutes, I will talk about institutions again. Because most countries that have successfully sustained a culture of entrepreneurship have had strong institutional arrangements that make entrepreneurship possible. Institutions are essentially boundaries to conduct, laws, settled habits of a community about how things should be done. Because they create boundaries, it is easier to anticipate what will happen, and therefore there is a lower level of uncertainty in the environment. So people are more willing to take risks. When they take risks, the outcomes will be wealth. give you a simple example. Somewhere not far from here in Ojodu, there's a factory that makes sorghum-based meals. I was speaking somewhere in Ikeja here a couple of years ago, many years ago actually, and the gentleman who owns that factory came to me to try and corroborate the point I was making about institutions. The equipment he uses in that factory were acquired from Guinness. You know, some time ago in our history, during Babangida years, Nigeria banned the importation of malted barley by the breweries so that we can use local inputs. So the breweries began to import equipment to use to mill local grains for the purposes of brewing. After they had imported all this equipment, the government changed the policy, as happens with most things in Nigeria. So Guinness did not have, they had already started using it, then they abandoned it. It's easier to just import malted barley from Europe. So they all went back to importing malted barley. In fact, one of my, same thing happened with flour millers, with regard to flour mills, all of them. Same phenomenon. Anyway, I remember Flour Mill of Nigeria was already making wonderful flour from corn. We called it Convita. The moment they banned it, they stopped making Convita and went back to importing wheat. But anyway, that's part of the challenge of Nigerian history. So in this particular case, when they then removed the ban on malted barley, Guinness stopped using that equipment, but never even, they had not installed the plant, sorry. They had imported, but they had not installed the plant. So they sold it off on auction. This man bought the equipment to use to run the factory that will make a sorghum-based meal. I forget the name of the product. I used to send me some after that meeting. And there was a small broken part in the equipment. He wanted to order the part from manufacturers in England. He began to write letters to the factory to ask for a pro forma invoice so he could order the part. You know, open an LC, order the part. Small part. Sent the first letter, didn't get any response. Weeks later, DHL sent another one, no response. After months of paying interest on money he borrowed to buy that equipment, this man got in an aeroplane and went to England, went to the factory. I said, look, he's trying to order this part, this small part. I said, oh no, just go to that place, you can place the order and take it. I said, but I've been writing you for how many months now? DHL, every time. No invoice, nothing. He said, no, that's not possible. He said, I've been, are you sure? When he got to see, who were you? He checked the address. Then somebody had the presence of mind to say, where are you writing from? He said, Nigeria. Oh, Nigeria. As a policy in this company, we don't open letters from Nigeria. Yes. If any letter is postmarked Nigeria, we just shred it.
And I'm standing with one of Nigeria's best, Africa's finest, Professor Utomi. How are you, sir?
I am good.
Thank you so much for coming today.
I'm glad I could come.
Thank you so much. All right, sir, briefly, what would you say on the state of unemployment here in Nigeria?
I think it's a shame because we really have what is considered a demographic dividend with young people who are strong, and if we invest enough in them and we create the right conditions, they will create jobs. That's how economies make progress. But our institutions, unfortunately, are weak, and the emphasis is not quite where it should be. We try to think of government as a solver of problems, whereas many of these things can be done differently by creating context for private initiative and enterprise to create jobs. So that's why we're challenged, I think.